So let's talk about XP debt. How do you like XP debt first off? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has its use. Growing up in EverQuest, I mean, we de-leveled as well. So
Oh wow. Okay.
that was painful. EverQuest had hell levels, and so usually in the 50s, and which were purposely longer than others. Took a longer time, and if you de-leveled back into it, it was just a pain. I think capturing that risk versus reward, which is a term I hate, but I'll use it anyways. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I think it's curious. I guess it always will come down to just testing and how much debt and how easy is it to work off. And the differences in the PvE, PvP sort of caravans and that sort of stuff that we accrue will be interesting to figure out. But I'm not against it. I think it makes sense. It's an easy way to add that risk in.
Yeah, I am so very torn on it, and I really think it's going to be a balance issue for me. Like, it's going to come down to how it's balanced out on whether I enjoy it, whether I like the idea or not, mainly because I like the idea of risk versus reward. I like the fact that you have to weigh negatives along with positives when you choose to do something. However, when it comes specifically to player death, there are equipment durability you got to worry about. There are collected, and I believe even processed, maybe processed, not processed. No, just collected, like gatherable materials that you can drop. And then also the penalties are worse if you don't fight back, if somebody comes to attack you out of the blue in PvP. And potentially there's also going to be scaring you off from doing any difficult PvE content, because then there is, raid bosses in games, right? Dungeon bosses, world bosses. You die a lot. You don't just go in and, oh, I died once tonight in the raid. No, it's, if you only died once for like half the raid, then you are very lucky, or you're overpowered, one or the other. So there's all of that. And then on top of it, then there's also experience debt. Luckily, you don't de-level, so that's a good thing. I would probably cry tears of, but I'm going to do it anyway. If it de-leveled me, because there's no way I'm not playing Ashes. But yeah, I think there's kind of a heavy stack there. Just more and more and more and more stuff you're risking by going into any kind of a perilous situation. People are going to be very risk averse. There's going to be a lot of people cutting and running whenever they can.
Yeah. Real quick, just so I can make sure I get this out there. For anybody who's listening and watching, if you want to participate, we have a poll up at the moment asking if you like the idea of XP debt. Feel free to vote in that. So that is live for, at this point, maybe 3 more minutes. And then additionally, I wanted to get into this particular post by Aasiyah. And Aasiyah says, "Hello, I'm old. I've been playing games since the 80s. I played EverQuest for several years and switched to WoW in March of 2005. With some value in my experience playing games that long, I am posting here to say that any type of experience debt, tax, or penalty is a bad game system. WoW learned from EverQuest and never put any type of XP penalty into the game. I understand that Ashes isn't trying to be WoW, nor should it. However, it is an MMO. The last thing that a game should do to me is take away something that I have earned. Also, it cannot penalize me too much for failing at a task. It should do something like walking back to your corpse. I saw someone say that Ashes is trying to be more of a hardcore game. Wildstar tried that same approach. The casual player base pays for the world we MMO players live in, and MMO cannot survive long without them. So please keep this in mind when planning out death taxes. Thanks for listening." And Virtek has played Wildstar. I don't know if you've played Wildstar, Fantmx. I played it for I think 2 days, and then it died. It literally died. And then I didn't get to play it again. But for me, I don't really like the idea of severe XP debt. I understand a little bit of it, but again, if I am trying to do harder content and I'm being penalized for doing harder content because I'm trying to learn how to do the harder content, I can definitely see how that is a deterrent for people. But I'll let one of you two go with whatever came to mind with that.
Yeah, I was going to actually talk about the Wildstar thing because
Yeah.
I like the idea of hardcore content when it comes to PvE. PvP, I could, if I'm being honest, I could do without any unorganized PvP. But I could also enjoy some unorganized PvP randomly. So don't knock everything. But yeah, I enjoyed when it was really, really difficult. The large masses vocally before the game launched were all about the hardcore content. They were all about it. Like, that's all you heard was everybody saying, yes, back to old school, it's back to difficult, it's back to raids being hard, and you have to beat your head against the wall to finish it. And within 3 months, like half the population, I'm probably not even exaggerating there, it's legitimately a guess, half the population disappeared because they were tired of it being so difficult.
Yeah.
3 months in, because it was so difficult, people dipped out, including 3 guilds that I was running around with. We were all kind of hanging out together. We had to combine all 3 in order to have a raid group. Out of 3 guilds that started with probably 60 people each. So if that tells you how many people ran out of just those guilds, it was bad, and it was because it was difficult. That's the reason everyone said they couldn't get through the first dungeon on the hardest difficulty, so they left.
Phantom, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think you both raised the obvious questions here, right? So, how do we learn? It just introduces a different style, and this is where the balancing will come in, because I know, at least when I've raided or done difficult dungeons, I mean, most raid groups learn by doing, right? So learning by doing, you often fail many times before you succeed, or at least consistently succeed. And so, yeah, having an EXP debt associated with that. Now we know, you'll have ways to remove some of that debt of who you have with you, but it's still, it could very well suck. I mean, that you're trying, like you say, you're trying harder content, like you should be, and you kind of get punished a little bit for it. And I actually kind of agree a little bit with the comment you read too. One of the things that will drive me nuts in the forums or on Discord is when somebody sort of gets really one-sided, and it's, usually it's in the context of PvP, but it's we don't want those PvP Andes here. Like they can, this is a PvX game. If you don't like it, don't come here. But I think that comment, I mean, when you look at historically at games, and as Virtek, as you just mentioned with, even with Wildstar, like that crowd really makes a lot of these servers function. And to be so quick to kind of say, well, this isn't for you, I worry a little bit about that. And the hardcore nature as well. Yeah. Even if you say, no, come join us, we'll have a place for you, but then it doesn't fit a play style. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
I actually want to grab attention to Zybak's comment on Wildstar having stepping stones. So Zybak says, if Wildstar had more stepping stone style of progression similar to World of Warcraft The Burning Crusade, with Karazhan being easy then moving to harder raids, it would have gone better. And I think that's an important thing to note. And it's also one of those things where I'm kind of hoping maybe as a cleric or as a bard, you had the ability to hopefully remove the XP debt, or like a good chunk of it, for reviving them, instead of them going to revive themselves and then running back. But I think that, with the bosses having the AI functionality, right, where it's starting off however the boss is going to start off, and then as you fight it, it learns and it grows from that. I think that's going to be interesting. I am a little worried with that getting intense and then there being PvP as well, but I'm still curious to see how that whole thing will work. And I thought that was an interesting system that they suggested in the first place, because again, Ashes is very innovative. There's a lot of new things that they're trying with this, but again, Alpha 2 is the place to test all of this. It's the place to give our feedback on, you know, how we're feeling with the XP debt and things like that. And I think that it's a great time and position for them to look at us trying things as Alpha 2 continues on. Because again, for those that don't know, Alpha 2 is a persistent alpha. So it's going to be lasting a lot longer than Alpha 1 did. Alpha 1 lasted about a month or so, and then it was down. Alpha 2 is going to go on. The server will persist later to be the PTR or the PTS. And I think that with having these things integrated over time and tested, I think there'll be plenty of time for feedback on the XP debt. And progression paths, right? And how you level. And that kind of takes me over to Chicago's post on alternate progression paths. Virtek, did you want to lead us in on this one?
Yeah, actually, I was gonna also call out Zybak's point about, I think it was Zybak. Let me scroll back up here just to make sure I'm not talking out of my ear here.
I fully drink the coffee.
Yeah, saying Wildstar was way too hard. It's one thing to have content, but it was largely inaccessible. And also there was another comment somewhere around up in here
before the one I got. Yeah,
it was about the what's the word? I can't find the comment here. But either way, the attunement, that was it. The attunements. That was from Viral. Viral said that.
Yeah.
The attunements, that is what really killed people, because they were trying to get into the raids, but they couldn't, because the attunement just, you had to go through and beat the dungeon on the hardest level or the hardest tier within a certain amount of time. Then you had to go do this at a certain amount of time with a certain quality, and then you had to go do this quest this many times, etc. And that's the part that crushed people. They couldn't even see a raid because they couldn't beat that first dungeon at the highest skill level.
Yeah.
Or difficulty level, I should say, not necessarily skill, but difficulty level. And I think that speaks volumes for having content that everybody can enjoy and making something, quote unquote, like something accessible for everybody. And that's why I keep saying I think World of Warcraft is onto something when it comes to tiering, but they just made it too accessible with like the look for raid and look for dungeon. And that kind of killed a little bit of the progression feel of going out there and making it happen. And the LFR, it's either people were doing LFR or they're doing mythic raids, and that was about it. Last time I played WoW, there wasn't really much in the middle.
Yeah. And yeah, I agree, Zybak. Welcome in, Raka. Zybak says, I think people wouldn't have minded attunements for later raids. The biggest problem was that you just got thrown into the deep end, essentially. Yeah, I think casual people would agree that having something easier and then it to have the option to get harder is like the ideal mixture. At least for myself too, because I like it something easy just to see like what the mechanics are in general, and then go and do it harder and then test it harder, you know, and keep seeing, like, that's what I liked about Mythic, right? See how far I could push into it, how hard of a level I could do.